Well, now to a small cap that's getting wins on the board as it continues to evolve. Hydrix designs and develops technology that solves real-world problems across a broad spectrum of sectors, including mining, industrials, as well as medtech, and increasingly defense. MD Gavin Coote joins me now. Gavin, a very warm welcome back. Does that sum up properly what Hydrix does?
Yeah, look, we've definitely got a differentiated proposition in advanced engineering. We do the safety critical engineering for new product developments. It's a real point of difference globally.
And you've had a series of significant contract wins across defense, medtech, and robotics. Is this a real genuine inflection point, do you think, in Hydrix's growth trajectory?
Yeah, inflection point's a great description. I think there's definitely visible milestones that demonstrate that all these growth initiatives are starting to come together. We've had significant contracted revenue wins in the last quarter, sales of about $6.5 million, 15 active clients with future revenue potential of $37 million. We've strengthened the balance sheet through a capital raise program, which will give us more operating flexibility. And as you've alluded to, Nadine, the increasing focus on the defence industry. We've had some really meaningful and validating wins in defence tech sector with a couple of new clients, and we recently announced the establishment of the Hydrix Defence subsidiary.
Really interesting. So you've got a $1.2 million counter drone contract recently. More than 37 million, I was reading, of potential value across sort of active client programs. And now you've established this Hydrix Defense. So how big do you see this business becoming over the next few years?
Well, if you look at the tailwinds and what's going on globally with conflicts and grey zone activities threatening critical infrastructure, Australian government, UK, US, and Australian government's committed over $425 billion to defence spending, including in that is about $7 billion of counter UAS technologies. So we see real growth opportunities. And the important thing for us here is it's not about looking to charge more hours in services. We'll do that. But the key play here from a business model point of view is to acquire IP ownership through development, licensing arrangements, M&A. The goal there is to capture higher value revenue streams going forward.
So defense is a very strong theme in markets right now. Also robotics, and you recently, previously to the quarterly announcement, put out a $3.4 million contract announcement with a US-based company called Remedy Robotics, I believe. So, it's quite the difference between defense and drones and then medical robotics. So what does that tell us about, I suppose, the kind of technology that Hydrix can win further work on in the medtech space?
It's a great observation. It is a natural extension for Hydrix's advanced engineering capabilities, developing safety critical medical devices that they can't fail. Someone either dies or gets hurt. And the same sorts of methodologies and principles apply equally in defence, where you refer to it as mission critical. In the case of NIA, we're helping them develop an electronic fusing device to be incorporated into a munition, which will be a part of a counter-drone situation. So all those electronic components need to work together to effectively go off at the right time. For example, the Phaser Innovation Company developing really important technologies in quantum positioning and navigation to operate vehicles undersea or airborne or on land when there are GPS denied environments, which are typically happening in conflicted zones these days. So we've validated that we have a right to play. We're on the cutting edge of technologies that governments around the world are looking to build out in their sovereign capability, including obviously the Australian government.
Yeah, and I know that borders don't mean a lot to you at Hydrix. You really do work all around the globe. But I sort of saw an interesting comparison that, one of your recent contract wins, $3.5 million, let's call it that, is around half of Hydrix's current market capitalization. So how should investors think of that? Is it a signal to you that the market is really underestimating the scale of what Hydrix can do?
Look, I think we just point them back to the genuine inflection point with the visible milestones that we've put up in the most recent quarter, and the announcements around pursuing opportunities to own IP, which changes the future revenue profile for the business. I think are all important observations for investors to make around the growth prospects for Hydrix, and with a far stronger balance sheet. Investors have said, yeah, we see some potential here. They put their hard-earned cash into acquiring equities in the stock, so that bodes well for having the balance sheet strength to pursue some of these growth initiatives that we've talked about.
Yeah, and I think you've said that the defense opportunity can scale within your existing cost base. How do you see that playing out if you continue to grow these different units within the business?
Yeah, so the engineering capability and capacity, that team are helping us to evaluate quite actively at the moment various intellectual property opportunities that are in those high priority defence technology areas. So there's capability and capacity there to expand our networks through our business development team and our marketing team. And I've spent quite a bit of time on the road over in the UK and out in various defence industries. So there's clearly demonstrated capability and capacity in the business to build a greater presence right now. In time, as we look to grow even at an accelerated level, we'll be able to add additional resources, but we're already coming off a really strong base of 50 plus people who again, we've been operating in the defence sector for a decade, but with the recent wins really helps solidify our track record and credibility to attract good talent as and when we need it. But at the end of the day, we're building on a lot of capability within the business.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. So what does success look like to you in terms of shareholder returns? And I ask because, is the goal ultimately a, sustainably profitable cash generative business, or do you also see opportunities to create shareholder value through, your venture part of the business as well, potentially owning equity or IP in some of these technologies that you actually help build?
Yeah, look, clearly long-term growth and revenue and profitability is a key focus for the business. But as we're seeing with various defence tech plays right now, there's a lot of valuation, blue sky valuation, if you're in the right sorts of IP ownership spaces. So I think there's multiple ways that we can help investors gain a return, in the near term and in the longer term. It's about getting after both of those. And, we just need to be out there communicating to investors where we're at in some of these milestones and what they might be able to, or what they might expect from us going forward.
Yeah, well, that's sort of my next question. So are there any sort of key catalysts that investors can look to, say, in the next 12 months?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we expect to see continued revenue growth that we've recently announced. Importantly, look for those opportunities where we do come to market and say, we're exploring actively ownership IP through licensing, through internal development that is very much geared to the demand signals in counter UAS and other autonomous systems. They're the sorts of next announcements that we'd like to be getting some traction in.
And I mean, this sounds like a pretty stereotypical question, but we often talk about moats in businesses. Like, what is this special sauce, so to speak, at Hydrix that allows you to continue to win these contracts, that shareholders can have belief in the fact that you will continue to exist in these really cutting edge, AI enabled and oftentimes, these industries?
Yeah, so there's a lot of companies doing early stage research, and then there's companies that have got really older, mature type products that aren't necessarily going to reflect the growth curves going forward. Our proposition is, with the advanced engineering capability that's been developed over decades and those recent wins in the really high priority defence tech capability areas, we're bringing these sorts of things together. There's lots of research, but unless you know how to productize and know how to commercialize, which Hydrix has a track record in doing, there'll be a lot of people out there eventually won't be able to get the sort of tractions that we believe Hydrix will, because we've got both the engineering capability and the commercialization capability.
So what's top of your list as priorities in the next 6 to 12 months, Gavin? I mean, this has been a long journey for you.
Defence tech IP ownership sits right at the top and continuing to grow the international medtech revenue part of our business, because that complex engineering capability, which is so appropriate and applicable to the defence tech, absolutely gives us a standout opportunity as a sovereign capability, human capital, if you will, a high capability part of the Australian sovereign supply chain and the resilience that's so important to not just about war zone conflict dealings, but also protecting our critical infrastructure and our borders. And we want to be a key plank in as an SME in the Australian landscape.